From fronting the scream to stepping into the chaos of Motley Crue to carving out his own chapter with the Dead Daisies, John Corabi has lived for more lives in rock and roll than most of us could dream of. With a voice soaked in soul, swagger, and scars, he's the kind of artist who doesn't just sing the blues, he's lived them. Today, on Long Way to the Top, on the eve of a European tour, we're diving into the Dead Daisies' new album, Lookin for Trouble, a record that sounds like it was born in a smoke filled bar, probably like the Poor Monkey Lounge, somewhere between Nashville and Muscle Shoals. It's raw, it's real, and it hits like a freight train, and he's no stranger to the show. We love having him on. John Corabi, welcome to the Long Way to the Top.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
Look, fantastic album right from the outset. I just have to say, this is on my record player 24/7. And I never realized how much I really love the blues tracks until I heard you guys singing them.
It's funny. It was kind of the whole process was a bit of a happy accident. Because we initially came to Nashville to write for the record that we put out late last year, Light 'Em Up.
Yeah.
And we had talked with our manager. We had all seen that there's a documentary that's out. It's actually brilliant. It's on the sounds of Muscle Shoals.
Yes.
And, we had all seen the documentary and we were talking about it and how Marty's studio kind of tied into that whole lineage of Muscle Shoals. So we asked our manager if we could go down to Fame, which is the first of three studios,
Mm.
and we just went down there. We're so blown away by the pictures on the wall, the old equipment, just the whole building. And just on a fluke, we started jamming at night. And we kind of, we did a couple jams, and it was one of those things. Oh, hey, what do you know? What do you know? Blah blah blah. Wound up doing like Crossroads, Born Under a Bad Sign, just goofing off. Marty recorded it, and then we listened to it, and we went, "Wow, this is really cool." And my point being, it's a very long turn here. I apologize, but
That's all right.
none of us were really blues aficionados.
Yeah.
And then when we started kind of researching all of these songs, we were like really kind of getting into the fact that, the blues back when back in the day, like the days of Robert Johnson and, just all these classic artists, the blues was kind of underappreciated. Like white America was not ready for this African American devil's music, as they called it.
Yeah.
And it really, thank God for the Brits. For some reason, it kind of made its way over to the shores of the UK, and bands like the Beatles and Stones, Yardbirds, Zeppelin, Foghat, and just the whole thing was so enlightening. And now it's like, thank God for YouTube and Google. Now I get to like go back to all these songs that I grew up listening to and really researching them and doing, falling into the rabbit hole, if you will. But it was awesome doing the record.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess what were you emotionally looking for when you were creating this record?
To be honest with you, again, like it was such a fluke. Like once we recorded just goofing off, Marty and our management and all of us, we were like, wow, this kind of sounds pretty cool. Okay, maybe what we can do is we can, write during the day. We'll just pick a song a day and just kind of rearrange it and lay it down. And, if it winds up being an album, awesome. If it's just, maybe it's stuff that we can put out on social media, whatever. And so we were sitting on the record for a while, and people at our record label and a few people that our management played it for, they're like, dude, this is really cool. You guys have to release this. So we didn't really have any expectations at all. It was just kind of have some fun with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just,
Yeah.
Marty was like, well, if you're going to do these songs, just try and make it sound like you guys,
Yeah.
do your own thing. Don't just mimic somebody else's interpretation. But we really didn't know what was going to come out of this thing, to be honest with you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I guess there's a lot of incredible blues songs that have been created throughout the years. How did you decide which songs to put on this album?
Well, it's funny because we had quite a few more that we were looking at, but again, not to beat a dead horse, but these are all songs in our youth
Mm,
uh, we heard, but we heard through the British bands.
yeah,
Crossroads, we heard from Cream. I always thought it was a Cream song.
yeah, yeah,
And then we heard Skinner's version later. We're like, oh, Skinner covered that Cream song. Do
yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
And it was like once you, it was real. Like I said, we're none of us were aficionados. These are just songs that we heard uh, through other artists. Like Going Down was Jeff Beck.
yeah,
Uh, Walking the Dog was Aerosmith. You know what I mean? Even Little Red Rooster, David Lowie, having grown up in Australia, he first heard Little Red Rooster from the Rolling Stones. They did some TV appearance
yes,
and they played Little Red Rooster, which twofold. He fell in love with the song, but he fell in love with the Rolling Stones, thinking it was their song.
yes,
And it wasn't until much later, once we got older and a little wiser, and we started realizing, like, oh wait, these are old blues guys from the 20s, 30s, 40s, you know what I mean, 50s, and they're just covering these songs. So these are all songs that we heard from the second round or the second
yes.
generation of people that were inspired by the blues.
But the incredible thing, though, is that each one of those artists made the song their own, and that's why thought that it was their song. You've done a similar thing, and I'm going to bring up Black Betty here because it's probably the one of the most well-known songs that you've covered on the album. And I'm listening to it, and I'm waiting for the Ram Jam style Black Betty, but it wasn't. It was completely different. You guys made this one your own.
And to be honest with you, like, so what we would do is we'd pick a song and then we would like listen to the versions that we were familiar with,
Yeah.
but then we would kind of deep dive into YouTube and really go back. And I mean, we heard Robert Johnson's version, and God, there's a million versions of Crossroads as well. Um, and we would like go, oh, well, that's kind of cool, or that's cool, this is cool. But to be honest with you, like one of the songs actually that we were looking at was, and it was kind of our blueprint for this whole record, was Zeppelin's version of When the Levee Breaks.
Yeah, right.
And if obviously you're familiar with the song, but
Yeah.
again, this is another song that when I was, 12, 13, 14 years old, when that record came out, I just thought it was another brilliant song from Led Zeppelin. And it wasn't until later that I found out that the song was written in 1929 by a lady named Memphis Minnie and Kansas Joe McCoy.
Wow.
And it was basically about the Mississippi River flood of 1927.
Yeah.
And they were talking about all these people that, lost their lives in farms and, whatever. And Zeppelin, being the blues aficionados that they were,
Yeah.
found this old song and they kept the lyrics, kept the melody, but they just completely rewrote the music to make it theirs.
Their own.
And that's kind of what we tried to do. And I think we did it on most of the songs. There were some that we were just perplexed about, but we just, it was funny. It was almost a joke. We were like, every song we'd look at, we'd go, "What would Zeppelin do?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, how can we make this ours? And when we kind of researched Black Betty, the only version that we found with music was Ram Jams.
Yeah.
All the other ones are Lead Belly, no music.
Drums. Yeah.
There's another guy I think named I, I can't remember his real name, but he used to go by the moniker Ironhead,
Yep.
and he was in prison, and they recorded him singing the song like in 33 or something like that, 1933. There's no music.
Yeah.
So we were like, okay, and it was Marty that actually suggested, you know, like a stomp, like almost like a stomp.
Yeah.
And not to give it away, somebody actually wrote on the YouTube video that we have out, kind of reminds me of Trampled Underfoot. Bingo.
Yeah.
That's what we were kind of that, not the riff, just that
The beat.
the
Yeah.
keyboard, yeah, like the bass had.
Yeah.
And it worked. So we just said, you know what? Screw it, let's do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Now, Boom Boom, another song which is just, I mean, a brilliant song. Why did you release that first? I guess in terms of all of the other songs.
Well, we did. First one was Crossroads.
Mm.
We did do a video for that,
Right.
God, a few months back.
Yeah.
And then on our last tour, um, I get, you know what, our managers and record labels, they use like algorithms, analytics, like all this whatever. And apparently, Boom Boom was one of the songs across the board. Everybody just loved
Mm.
that version. So while we were in France, I had a day off and we shot a video, which was actually quite funny. Like all these French people looking at me like, why is this guy lip syncing? And what is he listening to? There was no music. Like I had in ears in my ears.
Yeah, yeah,
But that one just seemed to be like everybody across the board was like, I just love the vibe. I love the feel of this thing. And so we did that one second.
yeah,
Black Betty is out now.
yeah.
Uh, and we're just, so far, it's just weird. Like there's some that are questioning why we did the blues. And then there's others that are like, guys, this is awesome. So,
But don't you think, like, I know they're questioning about the blues, but don't you think that modern rock has kind of lost touch with the roots, the soul, and the storytelling? These songs really told that story.
yeah. And to be honest with you, like one of the other things that we realized when we were researching a lot of these songs, we're like, you know what? This is this. With the exception of classical music,
Mm.
I think everything we listened to started with this stuff.
Yeah,
Like if you planted a seed, that the blues would be the seed, and a tree grew, and then all the branches were just different variations of. You can obviously see country music was inspired by the blues.
yeah,
Elvis Presley, early rock and roll,
yeah.
then, and then it morphed into, your heavier stuff and it's like everything, rap, everything,
Folk
I
music,
think
a whole lot.
started
Yeah.
with the blues. So
Yeah.
it really shouldn't be that much of a surprise because I don't think the Dead Daisies are doing anything out of the ordinary.
No.
We're all inspired by these, you know, in some way or another, we were all inspired and grew up listening to these songs. Maybe not the original artist, but we still grew up listening to these songs.
Now, Fame, obviously, you recorded it at Fame Studios and the Fame Records catalog, artists like Otis Redding, Etta James, Clarence Carter. When you were recording in the studio, did you, and I don't mean this in a spooky way, but did you feel, you know, them in the studio when you were recording?
It's funny, like that studio, it's obviously a functioning studio, but every day around 3 or 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, they do tours,
Yeah.
and they sell tickets, and people can come in and look at the old gear, and they tell stories, and it was like, the first day or so, we were just kind of following behind everybody, listening to some of the stories in this place. And then you look at these photos, and I remember at one point, I forget what song I was singing, but when, like, after a few days, when they would do the tours, we would go out, get some dinner, and then come back to the studio. And at this point, we stopped at a liquor store and we get some whiskey and wine and start drinking.
Yeah.
And I remember at one point, I was sitting in like the vocal booth, singing on this old microphone, and I'm looking through the glass at the band, and on the wall, like kind of above me and to my left, was this giant picture of Aretha Franklin.
Wow.
And I'm standing there, I'm holding a glass of whiskey, and I'm singing in this old mic. And I look up at the wall, and there's Aretha Franklin singing in the mic, holding a glass of whiskey. And it was one of those pinch me moments, you know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
like, wow, I'm probably standing right where she
Yeah.
stood. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the whole thing was just, and I know we did a documentary as well, and there's a really funny part in there where our bass player Michael Devin, because there was a ton of pictures of Dwayne Allman, the Allman Brothers, in the studio as well, and Michael's sitting there and he goes, "Well, there's a 90% chance that I'm standing right where Dwayne Allman stood when he played his guitar."
Yeah.
And the guy from the studio goes, "Actually, there's 100% chance that you're standing where Dwayne Allman slept because he slept everywhere in this room." So it was just one of those pinch me things from the, like, first day there. We were only there like 8 or 9 days, and we managed to squeak this record out. And then we went back to Nashville and finished working on Light 'Em Up. Finished recording that, but it was definitely a pinch me moment, like every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And I guess, with all of those artists, is there any, if you were able to bring one of those artists into the recording studio with you, and this is probably going to be a hardest question ever, who would it be to record with you on this album?
Oh, um, yeah, that is a great question, dude, because they were all so great.
Yeah.
I mean, you sit there and you look at, like you said, Aretha Franklin, Etta James, uh, you know, Otis Redding, Wilson Pickett, but then it was funny. I think probably the guy that I would pick out of that whole thing, and if you know the story, I would go with Dwayne Allman,
Yeah. Right. Right.
because, it's a little more in our wheelhouse, but they told a story. One of the stories they talked about, and they tell it in the documentary, is that the Swampers, the house band, went in one day and there was some young kid pitched a tent and was just like sleeping out in front of the studio. And he had a guitar with him, and they invited him in. He had some coffee and just heard him play. And it was like, wow, okay. Well, it wound up being, they kind of discovered Dwayne Allman.
Yeah.
He just loved the sounds that were coming out of that room. So he just said, you know what, screw it. I'm going to Muscle Shoals. I want to be like a session guy. I want to play with the Swampers. And he did.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just, God, they're all so amazing. I met Etta James once at the House of Blues in LA when I was with Rat. And she was a saucy old girl, dude. She was awesome, drinking her whiskey, and sat there talking to this little white boy that had leather pants on and eyeliner, and she was she was a handful. She was great.
Oh, that is fantastic. Yeah, I mean, obviously the record studio, the studio was such a iconic, but there were also a lot of these little, bars that were built, just as a on the side of the road. One of them you've actually got on the album cover, and that's the Poor Monkey Lounge. Did
Yeah.
you ever, like, when you were over there while you were recording, did you ever think, well, maybe we should just get the band and go and record in one of the, or just play in one of these places?
To be honest with you, like once we had this and we were listening back to it, I was talking to our manager and I was kind of looking up to see where some of these old juke joints were. And that we were in Alabama, but that is in Mississippi. I can't remember the name of the town. But I was also looking from where we were. I think that was only maybe an hour or so away. But the other thing I was looking at was I was trying to figure out what the crossroads were that Robert Johnson was supposed to have sold his soul on.
Did you find
And
it?
I said, well, we did the record. I go, man, it's like an hour. I have a huge, almost like a tour bus sized motorhome.
Yeah.
And I go, come on, dude, let's pack it up. Like, let's just take an afternoon and we'll hit a juke joint and then let's get a photo of the band standing at the crossroads, you know, and for some reason we wound up not doing it. But
Did you find
like I
it?
said, what
Did,
now?
did you find it? Did you end up finding it?
No, I do own a couple motorcycles, and I was telling my wife, I said we have to take a ride down there because it's not far from Nashville either.
Yeah.
It's maybe 2.5 hours, and I could be at the crossroads, and my wife would get a kick out of it too because one of the things that blues is also influenced is TV
Yeah.
and the whole mythology of a lot of this stuff. Because she used to watch a TV show here in America called Supernaturals,
Oh, I knew you were going to say that. One of my favorite shows of all time.
and I got caught up in it as well with her. And but she, like, I sat there and I told her one time, back when we were watching in 2008, 2010, whenever it was, I go, whoever's writing this show is a huge rock music fan
Yeah.
because they had Carry On Wayward Son.
Yeah.
They used sporadically through the thing. But if you notice, some of the episodes was, uh, there was one on the crossroads,
Yeah.
and then one where Dean gets eaten by the hellhounds.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was called Hellhounds on My Trail. And so there was all these little references to that whole myth of Robert Johnson, and I thought it was brilliant.
If you found the crossroads, you totally would dig a hole, right? And and
If
put
I
it
find the
in there.
crossroads, dude, I'm going to stand on it. I'm going to have my wife take the photo, and it'll be all over the internet.
Love it. Now you're heading off to Europe, live. How do you think this whole album is going to translate live?
Well, to be honest with you, again, the record just came out a few days ago, but we've actually been. I mean, last year we were on tour for the Light 'Em Up stuff, and we were doing a couple of the songs in our set then.
Yeah.
And we were actually doing I'm Ready
Yeah.
and Crossroads. And then the last run we did, we changed it. We were doing Crossroads and Going Down.
Mm.
And they went over great.
Mm.
I told everybody, hey, we actually did two records at once,
Yeah.
and we did the Light 'Em Up record, and we also did a blues record. Do you guys like the blues? And everybody's like,
Yeah.
and it's been going over killer.
Yeah. Yeah, well, especially over in Europe, you're going to be knocking them dead because they love the blues over there and in the UK as well. Was there, just as a final question, was there anything that you recorded that you just went, no, this is just a bit too raw, a bit too edgy to put on this particular album? Have you got more songs?
You know what's funny? Well, I really wanted to do um I did mention when the levee breaks,
Yeah,
like try and figure out another way, which is
that's a big call.
that's that's a big call. But one of the other ones I wanted to attempt uh was in my time of dying from the physical graffiti record,
Yeah,
which we went back and researched and found out the original version was called Jesus Make My Dying Bed.
right. Wow.
So Plant played around with those lyrics a little bit,
Yeah,
but it was funny in the process. I actually found, I mean, I think the Zeppelin version is, it's a master class,
yeah,
but I didn't realize this, but Bob Dylan covered it in like 63, 64, really early on in his career.
mm,
And his version is insane.
right.
If you ever get a chance to check it out, like type in Bob Dylan in my time of dying. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah, because we
So
kind of look at him like that, we kind of look at him as this folk sort of, I'm a folk artist,
yeah,
you know?
but it was funny. Not to, again, I apologize for the long answers. We did attempt a version of again, Robert Johnson, Terraplane Blues.
Right.
And we had heard the Foghat version and went back and listened to Robert Johnson's version. And we played around with it. Obviously, we said, all right, we got to make it our own. But it started to take such a left turn musically
Yeah.
that Marty was like, hey guys, like, I think we should hold this one. This is this this doesn't sound anything like Terraplane Blues. This is actually like a brand new original song.
Yeah.
Um, so we held that one, and then we bumped in another Robert Johnson song, "Sweet Home Chicago."
Yeah.
So we did that. But then when we went back up and we finished recording the Light 'Em Up record, we pulled that song back out. And, I was so inspired by everything I just saw and heard and all the research that we wound up putting it was the last song on the Light 'Em Up record, and it's called Take My Soul.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's so it was like that was originally we were trying to do something with Terraplane Blues, and it just wound up going into it just turned into Take My Soul. We just
Yeah.
rewrote a whole new song.
Yeah. And it's a great segue into the new album too, I've got to say. Perfect. Perfect. Now, the album is out now. You can get it on deaddaisies.com and definitely grab I mean, if you're going to get vinyl for anything, you got to get vinyl for this record, right? Because like it's just a classic blues album in my opinion. So,
Well, and if you look too, I mean, one of the things that I'm stoked about, if you pull the record out
yeah,
and look at the label imprint,
it's Fame
it's
Records.
yeah, it's like how awesome is that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Did you
we
how did you get onto Fame Records through that?
we well, we actually recorded it down there, like I said,
Yeah.
and then we wound up being friends with all those guys, and they were like, "Wow, this record sounds really cool." I don't know how our manager worked it out, but he worked out a deal like the Daisies have always had their own imprint
Yeah.
from day one, Spitfire,
Yeah.
and then I think they just did something with like Spitfire slash Fame and using their distribution and all this other stuff for this record. And so that record, I have one here. uh it just came out, like I said, a few days ago, and I just said, screw it. I bought one through Amazon. And it's like sitting in my closet. It's never going to be played. I'll get
Yeah.
another one and I'll play that. And I just
Good
love the
idea.
fact that it's got fame on the vinyl.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Well, also all the dates for the tour are going to be on the show notes as well. So check that out. John, I hope that the Europeans love you. You've been over there before, obviously, toured before with them. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised I haven't been thrown out yet, but you guys keep asking me back, so it's all good.
Fantastic. John Corabi, thank you for joining us on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you, buddy.
Thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Long Way to the Top. Hit plus or follow to subscribe to the podcast and head over to Facebook at the Long Way to the Top podcast and give us a like. Keep on rocking and I'll catch you on the next episode of Long Way to the Top.